Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, and I'm hosting this Satsang. I've followed Ramana Maharshi since 1990. Upon retirement, my wife Carol and I moved to Tiruvannamalai, home of Ramana Ashram. We lived there for 8 years and now live by Lake Chapala near Guadalajara, Mexico. I've offered this kind of satsang for more than 10 years, first in India and now in Mexico. I am a seeker just like you, and I have been blessed with years of deep teaching and practice, and I just want to share with you what I love. Now, this is a Ramana Maharshi self-knowledge satsang. We focus on self-knowledge since, like the Bhagavad Gita says, self-knowledge is the only thing that brings self-realization. So know yourself and be always free and at peace. We've been going through Ramana Maharshi's Who Am I? And now we are on paragraph 5. And Ramana said, the mind is a unique power in the Atman whereby thoughts occur to one. On scrutiny as to what remains after eliminating all thoughts, it will be found that there is no such thing as mind apart from thought. So then thoughts themselves constitute the mind. Now, this seems clear. The mind is just a bundle of thoughts. What is the mind but thoughts? Can you verify this for yourself? One important element in spiritual practice is you must find the truth for yourself. One way that is done is by the traditional approach. Listen or read, reflect, and meditate deeply, and make this experience and knowledge your own direct, immediate experience. We need to find out for ourselves what is true. Reflect on these questions. How many thoughts have you had in your life? The yogis say that each breath brings a new thought. Is any thought who you are? Can you see the space between two thoughts? Who are you at that moment? For whom are these thoughts? Who knows each thought? Do you know the thought, or does the thought know you? Now to our videos for the week. First is Swami Sarvapriyananda, and he's the dynamic young monk who is now spiritual leader of the Vedanta Society in New York. And we'll watch his video, Is It My Mind or the Witness Consciousness?
When I'm watching my thoughts without generating further thoughts, is it my mind or the witness consciousness that is doing the watching? In the waking state, I notice the absence of thoughts when the thoughts subside. If it is the witness consciousness that notices the absence, why can't I notice the absence of thoughts in the deep sleep state in the same way? I feel like that I'm stuck in my mind even when I'm witnessing it, or otherwise I could have done it in the deep sleep too.
All right. A subtle question. but important. These questions are important not only for the person who's asking, but for all of us. The basic question, it comes up, keeps coming up again and again. When you talk about witness consciousness, isn't it the mind watching the mind? Because the mind can do that. There's a term for that, introspection. You can watch your mind. So when you speak about witness consciousness, are you talking about that kind of thing, watching the mind? No. This is the difference. The mind can watch itself. You can introspect and look at the thoughts that are coming up in your mind. That is a practice of witnessing the movements of the mind. But it's still a practice. Why is it a practice? Because you can do it or not do it. It can begin and it can end. What begins and ends, what you can do or what you choose not to do, that is not the witness consciousness. Whenever you are not even introspecting, a flash of pain comes. You're not practicing Vedantic introspection. I am the seer and the pain is the seen. You're not practicing it. Pain comes and you say, ouch. Did you feel it or not? That which felt the pain, that which reacted with ouch, that one is the witness consciousness. Even when you are not trying to introspect. If you try to introspect and try to be a witness of your thoughts, that's a good practice. But remember, the operative word is practice. If you think that is the witness, then this problem will arise, that is not there in deep sleep. I am watching my thoughts. Sometimes I watch it, sometimes I don't watch it. Certainly in deep sleep I do not watch it because I don't feel I'm doing anything in deep sleep. Then what is the real? So this is the first point. This thing which you are talking about is the mind, certainly the mind. It is certainly the mind. It's not the real witness consciousness. One Swami in the Himalayas put it this way. It's an easy mistake to make. One Swami in the Himalayas put it this way. He said, teaching witness and witnessed, Drigdrishya Viveka, seer and seen. After teaching this, he said to the monks gathered there, so Swamis, do you feel that you are the consciousness in which thoughts are arising and thoughts are moving and thoughts are subsiding? You are calm now, relaxed? And he said, yes, yes, yes. Then this only works in Hindi. I'll translate. He said, Bahut bade gaddhe mein giroge. You have dug a specially big pit for yourself. You're going to fall into that pit. That's the mind. That's the mind. That which learns Drigdrishya Viveka, seer and seen discrimination, is the mind. That which attempts to practice it is the mind. That which makes the breakthrough is the mind. But once the breakthrough is made, it points to something beyond the mind which you were earlier, are now, even in deep sleep. You don't have to try anything there. We don't know it yet. That not knowingness is in the mind. And the knowingness about it also will come in the mind and remove that ignorance. And you remain as the witness of the mind, which you always were, from time immemorial. In deep sleep also you are that. But you will not have that kind of a thought, I am witnessing my deep sleep. Earlier I could not, now I can witness my deep sleep. No, 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 you cannot. If you do that, then you are not in deep sleep. That's the mind. The funny story of the mothers sometimes check if children are sleeping. Is the good boy sleeping? Is he asleep? If he's asleep, then his right toe will move. And the right toe moves, no, the child is just faking it. I remember in Deoghar, in the school where I first joined Ramakrishna Order School, there were hostels where children stay, little kids. And they become specially energetic and naughty at bedtime. And the Swami in charge of the hostel was one Swami in charge of one hostel was very strict. And the other Swami was a very elderly, very kindly, grandfatherly old Swami, and he couldn't manage those kids. He was 80 and they were 8. I mean, what do you expect? So he went for advice to the strict Swami. How do you manage to persuade them to go to sleep? He said, I don't take any nonsense. I say, I'm going to count to 3. 1, 2, and 3. By the time 3, you should be all tucked in bed with your eyes completely shut. And no movement, lights off. And I count 1, 2, by the time they're all jumping in bed and getting into the bed sheets and into the cupboards and going to sleep. And 3, it's done. Nobody dares to move after that. So this elderly Swami said, I should try it. And then he went and tried, and then he came back and said, it didn't work. Why? I said 1, 2, and the kids said 3. They know how much they can push you. Yeah. So one indication, then how do you make the breakthrough? Here is the indication. You said, the questionnaire, I feel that I am trapped in the mind. What notices this, that I feel the feeling of being trapped in the mind? Is that one trapped in the mind? Be very quiet and stay with that question. That I am trapped in the mind. Whatever I do is the mind. What is saying that? What notices it? That one is not trapped. Does anybody understand what I'm talking about here? Some of you do, yes. That one is not trapped in the mind. Never was.
And next we have Rupert Spira. He's one of the best explainers of non-duality, and we'll watch him talk about the true nature of the mind.
Nevertheless, I still feel like Jane, having to go through a process of waking up to know that I'm Mary.
Yes, that may be so. So, as Jane, ask yourself recognize you're Jane. What's your name? Bob. So, on this occasion, Mary has dreaming that she's Bob. And Bob realizes, Bob is wandering around the streets of London, and let's say no, I don't want to complicate it. Let's say Bob is on the streets of London. So Bob realizes that everything he knows, all his experience, or all his knowledge and experience, is refracted through the prism of his mind. He cannot be sure that what he sees out there is an external world made out of matter, because it's all filtered through thought and perception. So Bob has this recognition. Until I know the nature of my mind, until I know what is true about my mind, I cannot know anything that is true about the world that I perceive. So Bob has this incredible recognition that there can be nothing more interesting or important than to know the nature of my mind. I cannot know what anything is until I know the nature of my mind. And so at that moment, Bob's mind turns away from the objects of thought and perception, and it asks itself, what is the essential nature of my mind? What is my mind made of? It's obviously not made of thoughts, because thoughts are always coming and going, but my mind is always present. It cannot be made of perceptions or feelings or sensations, because these are always coming and going. But there is one element of my mind, there's an essential, irreducible element of my mind that is constant. That must be what the mind is made of. And thinking like this, Bob's mind is tracing it doesn't realize it, but Bob's mind is tracing its way back to its essential, irreducible nature. And then there is this recognition at some point that consciousness is the fundamental nature of my mind. And then we begin to ponder the nature of consciousness, or of course it is consciousness that does the pondering. Consciousness, as it were, looks at itself. We are conscious of being conscious, aware of being aware. And there is this recognition that just in the experience of being aware itself, there are no limitations. I cannot get to the edge or the end of being aware. The experience of being aware cannot be divided up. It is a seamless, infinite, indivisible, ever-present whole. That is the recognition. What I am is eternal and infinite. And then we go back to the experience of the world, and we realize that the world that we once thought took place outside of ourselves is an appearance within this ever-present, unlimited consciousness. And everything that appears in consciousness is made of consciousness. And that's the recognition. Everything that I experience is God's infinite being in religious language, or in the language we use here is the activity of consciousness, modulation or coloring, a self-coloring of consciousness.
But from that recognition of aware of being aware, there would still seem to be a deconstruction process to go through for the mind and body.
So say that again. From
the point of becoming aware that there is only consciousness.
Yes.
There is still a body and a mind here which
yes.
has spent 66 years thinking differently.
Yes, exactly. So that there is one thing. The first step, the recognition, I am awareness. The second step, the recognition of the infinite nature of awareness. And then the third step, those first two steps are both part of the inward-facing path, the Vedantic path, the mind tracing inwards. And then the third step is this is the Tantric or the outward-facing path, the realignment of all aspects of our experience with this new understanding. There has been this recognition. What I essentially am is infinite consciousness. And all my experience, and so then we begin to explore experience, objective experience, and we realize it all takes place not to consciousness, but in consciousness. And then not just in consciousness, but as consciousness. So there is a gradual realigning of the way we think, feel, act, perceive, and relate with this new understanding. This is the process that takes place after the recognition of our true nature. And that was the part of this teaching which I was earlier calling the Tantric approach, the approach that includes all objective experience, whereas the Vedantic approach, the inward-facing path, starts by excluding all experience and just focusing inwards. I don't mean inwards onto the body, I mean inwards towards the essential nature of mind. So yes, it's important that, as you say, Bob has some habits of thinking, feeling, acting, perceiving and relating have developed over 66 years. And these habits outlive the recognition of our true nature. If you had been on a progressive path and spent 40 years doing preliminary practices, then a certain number of these habits would have been realigned along the way before you met the direct path teachings. And that may be the case in your case. I don't know. But even if we have, after the recognition of our true nature, for all of us, there are habits. Habits in the way we think. Habits in the way we feel. The way we sense the body. Habits the way we relate with one another. The way we perceive the world. That are still running on the old paradigm. And it's amazing to... It's very easy. I hear this sometimes that it's obvious that what I essentially am is unlimited awareness, and everything appears in that and is made of that. But it's not just a one-time recognition. The mind, there are layers and layers and layers and layers of habit in the mind and in the body. And it's my experience that these layers are gradually exposed to the light of awareness. I find now that my mind is constantly being illuminated by fresh understanding. That this understanding takes time to deeply penetrate the old structures of thinking and feeling. It continues to fill out and reveal itself and to colonize our experience. Not just our feeling, but even our thinking. In fact, I don't think we can ever say this colonization or permeation of our experience by the light of awareness ever comes to an end. I hope it doesn't.
Thank you.
And finally, we will listen to Nome. Nome has been my spiritual teacher since 1990, and meditate along with him. He wants you to experience what he's talking about. Experience it, not just think about it. And he also will be talking about the mind.
The mind resolves itself in the self. The mind is dissolved. The mind is destroyed. These statements and one similar to them we find in the instructions given by the Maharshi, as well as strewn throughout the Upanishads and other scriptures. What is the mind? On the one hand, the Maharshi has said the mind is only a bundle of thoughts. And on the other hand, the Maharshi has said the mind simply does not exist. Regarding the latter instruction, he has said realizing the mind's non-existence is the direct path for all. What is the mind? When he said it is only a bundle of thoughts, it's to remove the false notion that there is a second knowing entity other than the infinite consciousness. The infinite consciousness in which there is no knower and known, no subject and object, which are illusions that appear only in the waking state of mind and the dreaming state of mind. When he said, this is the direct path for all, to realize the mind's non-existence. What else is this but the profound realization that there is no second identity, no second entity, and therefore no duality. That is, there is no one to say, I know the self, or I do not know the self. Regarded as a bundle of thoughts, the first thought, integrally connected to all the other thoughts, is the notion I. It is merely the barest assumption, hardly a thought. All the other ideas are based upon it. Or from another perspective, all the other ideas are just the idea of I in various guises. Therefore the inquiry, who am I, puts an end to the mind by showing that it never actually exists. That which was never created is said to perish or dissolve. What else is that resolution, dissolution, or destruction but the knowledge of what is real, in which the unreal has never come to be? What else is loss of the ego but the realization that the self alone exists eternally? And there is nothing and no one else, ever. The reality that alone is, for which there is no alternative, for which there is no other, in which there is no differentiation, which is beginningless and endless, is truly called non-duality. Whether you comprehend what is being indicated or not, even now, what is it that so knows? I understand, I do not understand. What is it that knows this? To fathom the depths of your own identity, your own existence, you must inquire more deeply than the perceiving and the conceiving, the perceived and the conceived. For what you are in truth certainly cannot be a body or the senses. And it cannot be the mind or its thought forms. What is it that you call I? What is it that appears as a mind? Existence, which is invariably singular, which alone deserves the name I, what is its nature? The consciousness which is ever shining, synonymous with that existence, which always knows, but is never divided into triads of knower, knowing, and known. What is it? Can there be a mind in that? If all of illusion and its consequent bondage and suffering is just the delusion of the mind, yet the mind itself is found not to exist, what remains? Inquire within yourself to know the knower without superimposing any of the attributes of the known upon the knower. Self-luminous consciousness, self-known, hence self-knowledge, remains. You who are, however you imagine yourself to be, inquire as to who you are. Being, which is unborn and indestructible, utterly formless and undifferentiated, which always is only as it is, remains as it always is. This we loosely refer to as self-realization. Yet who realizes what? Nevertheless, the falsely assumed ego or mind is nowhere to be found. Bondage is impossible, and immortal bliss is realized as the natural state.
Now we will take a few minutes and inquire for ourselves. First, just notice that you exist. You exist, and you know that you exist without thought of it or sensing it. You just know. Then investigate within yourself. When your mind is quiet, who or what are you? Does your existence depend on thinking? Don't you exist even when there is no thought? If I'm not mind or thought, just who am I? What is the nature of my existence? Experience this inquiry. Don't just think about it. Who am I? All right. If this satsang was of interest to you, I have more resources, a free book site, a YouTube site, and my blog. The URLs will be on the screen next. There will be more of these satsangs in the coming weeks as we continue with this series based on the Ramana book, Who Am I? Thank you for sharing this teaching with me. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.